during the Khilafah of Sayyidina Umar bin al-Khattab radiyallahu anhu, Sahaba ridwanullahi alayhim ajma'een were able to free a lot of lands and a lot of people from the oppression of the two superpowers of that time, the Roman and the Persian Empire, where people were forced to live under that oppression. It was to the extent that many times people had to sell their own children to be able to pay the taxes to those rulers, who then would use that very same money for their own, not only the luxuries of the life, but even for having fun in their lives. It was something that it was intolerable for people, but they had no way of dealing with it. And therefore they were living by it, and they accepted it. Sahaba ridwanullahi alayhim ajma'een, with the rahmah and the blessing of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and the help of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, were able to free those people and free those lands from those oppressions. And of course, during that process, there were battles that took place. And the reason I'm saying during that process, not all the time, we all know Baytul Maqdis, the keys were just handed over to Amir al-Mu'mineen Umar bin al-Khattab radiyallahu anhu without any war. They said the description of a person who would take over this place is mentioned in our books, in our testaments, in the according to them, in their Bibles. And that description fits your Khalifa Amir al-Mu'mineen Umar bin al-Khattab radiyallahu anhu, and therefore they handed over the keys to him. At some other places, a war took place, and whenever a war takes place, of course, there will be captives of war. Different parts of the world, different countries, different laws as they have in different parts of the world, they have different ways of dealing with these captives of war. But the best way of dealing with these captives of war is the way that Islam teaches us. Such a beautiful way. The word we use for it and the world used for it is slavery. And this is why as soon as people hear the word, they run away from it. They get upset. Slavery? How can Islam allow slavery? Many times, because of not understanding the terminology of the people who are using it, we borrow a word from someone else, and then we translate it according to our dictionaries. That's not just a general word that's used over there, it's a terminology. For example, the word salah, it's an Arabic word used by Muslims, by Arab Christians, by Arab Jews. And they all use the word salah. They have their own dictionaries. They have dictionaries of the language that will explain to you what does the word salah means. Now, if a non-Muslim Arab will take a dictionary to try to translate the word salah from Quran, and he's translating it according to his dictionary, he will never be able to understand what salah means in Islam. It's a terminology that's used in Islam. Wudu, it's an Arabic word. It's not invented by us, by Muslims. It's an Arabic word, can be used by any non-Muslim, but does not stand for all of these rules of washing ourselves and cleaning ourselves that the dictionaries will talk about. When we look at the word slavery, it's a word that we use it, but then there is a whole concept behind it in Sharia, in Islam. The laws about them, rules about them, regulations about treating them and keeping them. Anyway, the topic of today is not about slavery, and I'm not going to go into the details of it, but by the end of it we will have little understanding of it also, because the topic is a little bit related to it also. So, as they had the captives of wars, one of the people that was captured during that time, his name was Yasar. Yasar, as he became the captive of war, he became a slave, and finally he came out to be the slave of Zayd bin Thabit radiyallahu anhu, a Sahabi of Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wasallam. Who's Zayd bin Thabit radiyallahu anhu? The Sahabi who was trusted by Abu Bakr and Umar radiyallahu anhuma to write the Quran and to compile the Quran. We say Abu Bakr radiyallahu anhu compiled the Quran. Yes, he's getting all the reward for it because it was done by his orders and the opinion of Umar radiyallahu anhu. But the one who did it was Zayd bin Thabit radiyallahu anhu. He did it during the Khilafah of Abu Bakr. And when Uthman radiyallahu anhu wanted to compile it in the form of one book, again he chose Zayd bin Thabit radiyallahu anhu for the very same work. Did not change his opinion, and Sahaba did not change their opinion about who would do it. It was Zayd bin Thabit radiyallahu anhu. About whom Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wasallam says in the hadith, afraduhum, that the person who has the best knowledge of inheritance in Islam, laws of inheritance, wasiyah and mirath, is Zayd bin Thabit radiyallahu anhu. And he was the mufti of the people of Medina Munawwara, and in halal and haram, and especially in ilm al-mirath, in the laws of inheritance. So Yasar became the slave of Zayd bin Thabit radiyallahu anhu. As I said, we don't have time to go into the details of laws of dealing with slaves in Islam. But Yasar is raised, and now he's staying with Zayd bin Thabit radiyallahu anhu and having an opportunity to spend most of his time around Zayd radiyallahu anhu. Later on, Zayd radiyallahu anhu got Yasar married to a woman who was also a captive of war. And her name was Khayra. So Zayd got married to Khayra. Khayra was a slave woman, and she was under Salama radiyallahu anha, the wife of Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wasallam. So she had the opportunity to live with my mother and your mother, with the mother of mu'mineen, Salama radiyallahu anha. Yasar and Khayra, they got married, and after some time they had a child. Salama radiyallahu anha named the child Hassan. This young boy Hassan was raised in the house of Salama radiyallahu anha, and in the laps of Salama radiyallahu anha, he spent more times in the laps of Salama radiyallahu anha than his own mother's laps, because she was busy with working, and Salama radiyallahu anha would ask her to do the work, and she would sit with the child. Imam Zahabi, Imam Ibn Hajar, all the scholars narrate that Salama radiyallahu anha, many times as the child would cry and the mother is not around, and the child is at the age that he has to be only breastfed, so she would feed him in that manner just to make him go to sleep. That thing had its own effect on this child in future. And the scholars say that that was the reason and one of the main things that made this child Sayyidut Tabi'een, the leader of all the Tabi'een, Radwanullahi alayhim ajma'een. Subhanallah. Father is a slave, mother is a slave. They are captives of war. And the son is the leader of his time. The whole ummah runs towards this man to learn from him. And not only to learn from him, they just wanted to see his face and feel that we are blessed to see his face. If they get an opportunity to shake his hands, they used to consider themselves very fortunate for that day, that I was able to shake the hands of this man. He became the leader of his time. This is what Islam did for the slaves. For these captives of war, they are becoming the leaders of the ummah. Their children are becoming the leaders of the ummah, subhanallah, who are supposed to be slaves in future, but now they are not slaves, they are sayyid, they are leaders. And you'll be surprised to hear, inshallah, as we'll talk in our future sessions, most of the great tabi'een came from the very same route because they were raised, they became the captives of war, either themselves or their parents, and then they were raised in the houses of Sahaba Ridwanullahi alayhim ajma'een and great Sahaba, and they finally became the leaders of the Ummah. This is how Sahaba raised them, and this is how they used to raise their people. This boy had a great opportunity as he grew up to be around Ummahatul Mu'mineen, because Ummahatul Mu'mineen loved this boy, they trusted this boy, and because they did not have a son, they needed someone around them who would do the work from one house to another, bringing things, taking things to others. This boy took that opportunity and started doing all of this work for them. Up to the age of 14, he was in Medina Munawwara. And he spent all of his time in the house of Ummahatul Mu'mineen, and especially with Salama radiyallahu anha. Then his parents, of course, they were set free by Zayd. Father set free by Zayd, and mother is set free by Salama radiyallahu anha. And they migrated to Basra, and from there on, this boy was known as Hassan Al Basri rahimahullah. As I said, he got the opportunity of being around those great people. When he was born, Umar radiyallahu anhu, knowing that how much Salama radiyallahu anha loves him, when he saw the boy, he made a dua for this boy. Allahumma faqihhu fid deen. Ya Allah, give him the understanding, deep understanding of this deen, وَحَبِّبْهُ إِلَىٰ خَلْقِكَ, and make the people love him. Hassan Al Basri rahimahullah was master in all the Islamic sciences. People used to go and depend on his knowledge in all Islamic sciences. Because some of them specialized in fiqh, some of them specialized in tafsir, some of them specialized in hadith. He was in all of these sciences, and people used to refer to him for all of these sciences. Once a person went to Basra, which is part of Iraq, and asked the people of Basra, who is your leader? They said, Al-Hassan Al Basri. And he asked, Bima sadakum, how did he become your leader? What was the reply? How people were looking at it. The reply was, لِأَنَّهُ اسْتَغْنَى بِمَا فِي أَيْدِ النَّاسِ. Because he wasn't looking forward to get anything from people. He's not looking to get gifts from people, to get money from people, for people to come and stay, mashallah, because you are doing such a great service for the community. Here we will offer you this car, we'll offer you this home, we'll have for you this money, this gift. استغنى بما في أيدي الناس. He did not want from what people had. واحتاج الناس إلى علمه. And people needed his knowledge, so he became the leader. Because he was not in need of anyone, and all the people needed his knowledge. Hassan Al Basri rahimahullah was known to be the person out of the tabi'een who resembles the most to the Sahaba Ridwanullahi alayhim ajma'een. He had a great resemblance in all of his actions and his words with Sahaba Ridwanullahi alayhim ajma'een. And especially with two of the Sahaba. Amazing that you find, amazing qualities you find in this man. They say that in his hikmah, in his wisdom, he used to resemble Ali radiyallahu anhu. And in his rightful opinions and understanding, he resembled Umar radiyallahu anhu. And there can't be anything better that can say about a person's wisdom and understanding. That on one thing he is resembling Ali radiyallahu anhu, in the other one he resembles Umar radiyallahu anhu. Abu Musa al-Ash'ari radiyallahu anhu's son, Burda, Abu Burda, he says that I have seen a lot of Sahaba Ridwanullahi alayhim ajma'een. I haven't seen anyone after Sahaba who resembles Sahaba more than Hassan radiyallahu anhu. Amir al-Sha'bi rahimahullah, inshallah we'll talk about him as we get the chance.